Right, how we doing, guys? Today, we've a lovely question in. Topic for newsletter: Mace or Indian clubs? The answer is always both, but why? What does one offer, the other does not, etc.? Unless you've already explored this topic, Alistair. Alistair's done really well there. What I particularly like about Alistair's question is he starts off with an either or, Mace or Indian clubs. Just so you know, that's a Mace. That's an Indian club. Just because I've got them handy. Either or questions are always closed. It's one or the other. There's no room for nuance. There's no room for. It's like kids are always saying, "What's better? Who'd win in a fight between a gorilla and a grizzly bear?" Or is it? Are you a Marvel or are you DC? Are you rugby league or rugby? Is it? Are you a Marvel or are you DC? Are you rugby league or rugby union? iPhone or Android? Why can't you like both? What if one's better for this and the other's better for that? And that's called nuance, where there's deeper layers to the question. And that's what Alistair does. He starts off with either or, but then he says the answer is always both, but why? What does one offer, the other does not? And that's the question worth exploring. So, Indian clubs, I trying to think back when I got my first Indian club. Paulie and I, back in the very, very early days of walking. So that's back somewhere between 2007 2010 is when we were ordering in a ton of kit, all our kettlebells, etc. And we decided to order in some clubs. And it was Paulie had used them, or he remembers them being around in his youth. Paulie's in his 50s now, so when he was a kid, he remembers Indian clubs still being around. And we found a video of Pat Miletich, who any of you UFC fans will remember. I think it was UFC 16 he won. Pat Miletich had a video out of demonstrating himself using Indian clubs. And Paulie has had shoulder problems for as long as I've known him. At the time, mine were pretty good. I've since injured this shoulder a few times. And it just stood out to us that watching the video of Pat Miletich, it was a view from the back, shirtless, of the way his back was moving and his shoulder blades were moving. And then Paulie was reminiscing about back in the day where, because Indian clubs obviously come from India, and India being a British colony at one point, I actually have family who were born in India. My granddad served out there for a while. So Indian clubs became adopted, and I believe especially in the British Navy. Now, don't quote me on that, but you'll see videos, old videos of the black and white videos, sort of early 1900s, people swinging Indian clubs. Wooden, not the plastic one I have down there. And then, I don't know, a number of years ago, they just started cropping up again, which was lovely. Really, really nice to see. So what is it? It's a club-shaped tool. Let's grab this here because it's here. This is the Palavandal. These are plastic Palavandals, they're called, from a company called Heroic Sport based in Denmark. An old kettlebell buddy, Thierry Henry, and his buddy designed and built these. and they screw onto plastic bottles. This one is a 1.75 litre Sprite bottle filled with sand. But what you'll see is there's no weight here. All the weight is down there, giving you a leverage type action. That's too heavy for proper levering stuff on that joint there. But, oh, here you go. I've got a toolkit handy here, because essentially that's an Indian club, right? It's also a mace if it was longer. So as you tilt that, you feel the weight, or the leverage, the force, not the weight, the force, increase and then decrease. So you can swing these around as you would a club or a hammer. An axe. So you can swing them around, and what you get is a force traveling in a circle, but also the force going out from the center of that circle, that centrifugal force. And I know I said that to Paul, another Paul, not our Paulie, who used to try me in wild geese, and he turned around and told me centrifugal force is not a real force. That wrecked my head. I'm not going to get into it. That's an argument, but when you swing that around, you can feel it pulling away from you. What I like to think of that is it's an expansive force. It's a stretching, there's a word on traction. It's a type of traction that you're pulling against. Most strength training is compressive in some way. Yeah? The weight is on our hand, on our wrist. It's compressing. It's pulling us down, squashing us in the direction of gravity, whereas a swinging tool gives the opportunity to go out in any direction, which is really nice. Really nice. India has a long history of using these tools, particularly in the Kushti wrestling. And it does seem to be, when it came west, a lot of martial arts folk were the guys who really took to it. Same with the kettlebell, to be honest. When the kettlebell first exploded on the scene, it was largely martial arts guys. I remember the very first Irish kettlebell sports competition. At least half of the lifters, certainly all the top level lifters, were all martial arts or boxing back in their earlier years. That's always interested me. Why do martial artists go with swinging momentum-based implements? It just feels, that movement, it just feels fighty rather than locked in and tight tension. Of course, there's a place for both. But anyway, let's get back to the point here. So there's a quote that I found, and I can't remember who said it. It was on social media, I read it years ago, stuck in my head. And somebody commented, Indian clubs do for my shoulders what kettlebells do for my hips and low back. And I think that sums it up really nicely. The swinging, relatively light nature of the weight. The faster you swing it, the more force it exerts. It doesn't change weight, but it exerts more force on you through momentum, centrifugal force, etc. It multiplies up. Any physicists in the audience, you can do a bit of maths and you can tell me how much it might multiply. So, as you're swinging these around, they're going in a big circle. Your shoulder has a huge, huge range of motion. You circle your arm, you can circle it this way, you can circle it this way, and every angle in between. Your shoulder blade, your scapula, well, that has 6 movements. Up, down. Hello, you little gremlin. Come here. Say hello. You going to say hello? Huh? So your shoulder blade, can elevate, depress, can upwardly and downwardly rotate. It can protract and retract. Go on then. As well as a bit of anterior, posterior tilt. It does all that in conjunction with the humerus, the upper arm bone. So as your arm lifts, that will pull the shoulder into upward rotation. Yeah, from here, if I shrug, there it elevates. If I reach forward, it protracts. I pull back, it retracts. But these movements aren't meant to happen as independent, defined movements. We put these definitions in place for ease of description. These all happen in flow. So as I throw hands, there it's protracting. Oh, there's an upward rotation, maybe even a bit of elevation towards the end of that. Yeah. And then obviously it's going to retract, depress a little bit on the way back. It's a combination of movement. There's an awful lot an awful lot of talk happens around the rotator cuff muscles. And we've got these linear type movements because the rotator cuff is meant to stabilize the scapula. Scapula, yes, it gives the shoulder stability, but the scapula itself has to be mobile, has to slide around over the rib cage. And your rib cage movement is what largely gives the scapula either opportunity to move freely or restricted. So if you live in a flex position, it's very difficult to get retraction. If you live in a highly extended position, it's going to be very difficult to get elevation, upward rotation. Difficult, not impossible. But if you can go from flexed to extended, rotation, lateral flexion, etc., now your scapula have a lovely surface to work around. And if the scapula and the humerus, the arm bone, the so-called glenohumeral joint, if they're all working in unison, your rotator cuff is nothing to worry about. Your rotator cuff will be solid. And this is what Indian clubs give you, in my opinion. That circular movement and that multiplanar movement as your club swings around. This is just one of the simple movements, swinging through. Now I'm sitting down at a desk in front of a camera, so do you know what I mean? But all the actions of the scapula with the arm bone, the coordination between the two of them are in play. Especially when you get to doubles and you're closing and you're opening. Now you've got the thoracic movement. So, Indian clubs, there's just something magical about the way they work the shoulder. I've noted here, they give you like a pumping, almost massaging type of effect. Almost. So, clubs and maces, what's the difference? Clubs, single hand, generally pretty light. Now mine are 4 kilos. That's on the relatively heavy end of club use. They can go down to half a kilo and up and up. Single hand, usually swung for relatively high reps in the classical Indian club use. Inward heart shaped, outward heart shaped, front to back. There's really a handful of movements you can do, and then you can string them together into combinations and so-called flows. So Indian club, banging around, quite high reps with a relatively light load. If you look at old-time strongman stuff, you look at Louis Simmons type band work, and you'll see light, fairly ballistic work done for very high reps. It's thought to be very good for tendon ligament strength. Indian clubs fit into that category. Lovely. Is it really developing your connective tissue? Honestly, I can't say yes or no, but I would like to think so. I have enough anecdotal evidence from the guys I've shown Indian clubs to and have used Indian clubs, the guys who've been doing it longer than me, and I've spoke to them, that yes, this theory seems to hold up. High rep, relatively light, let it go. The beauty of the Indian club when it's light is you can genuinely let it pull on you. Yeah. Almost creating space in the joint. And I say almost, it's very much a mind visualization thing. Whereas so often we're taught to pack the shoulders and tighten everything up, and everything just locks into center. Indian clubs give the opportunity to reverse that and expand out and get bigger. What are you doing, you little gremlin? If you hear a squeak, she's got a squeaky toy. Good girl. Come on then. Now, that's the Indian club. Heavier clubs, so from my 4 kilo and upwards, they don't get swung with quite the same level of abandon. I can wang those 4 kilos around because experience, size, strength. Go up to like an 8-10 kilo club. I'm a little bit more careful. You're not getting that same expansion. But that's fine. Really good for all round, we'll call it joined up strength. Your mace. Here we go. Try and do this without wrecking the place. There you are. Oh, there you go. That's an old protein container filled with concrete. There's actually a couple of weight plates in there on a bamboo pole. So that's just shy of 16 kilo on a 5-foot pole. Again, you can work out the leverage involved in that. And 2 main movements of a mace. A 360 circle where it goes around behind the head and through, or a 10 to 2 where it does the same thing but doesn't complete the circle. It goes from here, which would be your 10 o'clock, around to your 2 o'clock, and then back again. Okay. If you've done plate halos, it's very much the same movement, and we know how good plate halos are. This is that movement amplified. That is a pretty heavy mace. Even for me, especially at the moment I'm out of practice, that's a heavy mace. I have a lighter one in the clinic. You'll see me swinging it around in the clinic the odd time. So it's more of a strength emphasis. It's still a big circle because it's 2 hands. The circle is slightly different. The shoulder blades are moving slightly differently, but it is like a massage for the upper back. You should be opening and closing the chest. You feel that stretch through the abs. There's a weight shift as you move, 15 kilos on 5 feet away from you as that circles. You're going to, even me at 100 plus kilos, you are going to have to move with it. You can't stand dead still. The drawback with the mace, more so with the Indian clubs, is the learning curve. You kind of have to want to learn to want to use one of these, especially one that's of a load that is going to challenge you. Not a fan of light mace work outside of learning. If you're going to go light, I would rather use Indian clubs and just get more reps and more movement variety. A light mace, I don't think is ideal. I'm nothing against mace flow, but that's just not. It's just not where I am. I don't think it has. I don't think it's given credit to what the mace is, where it comes from, and why it became a common use in the old wrestling traditions. Um, Mace flow is great for coordination and just movement exploration, akin to a kind of dance, and there's nothing against dancing. But you could do that with just about anything. It's not mace work per se. So the mace is moving around. It's challenging the upper back like you wouldn't believe. I remember the first time I did, I think it was kettlebell snatch, which obviously works the whole back. But I'd been doing a lot of mace work the day before, and oh boy, did I feel that snatch that day. So mace is heavy, not quite the same range of motion benefits as you get from the Indian clubs, but the two are very much complementary. Is one better than the other? Absolutely not. Better for what, I suppose, is the question. Indian clubs, great to warm up. Great for non-training days, just as play. You can mess around with them in between sets as rest periods. They pair lovely with bodyweight exercises. So if you're doing sort of calisthenics, if you do a lot of push-ups, you can mess around with the Indian clubs in between. You'll see in Swedish free gymnastics, look up some of these videos. I forget the name of your fella that does the videos. He's brilliant. If I remember, I'll put it in the comments. And you'll see how the Indian clubs were added in as leverage. So movements where you're leaning forward, hinging forward at the hip like a bow to load up the hamstrings. If you put your arms overhead, that you'll feel how that increases the leverage. You add an Indian club, even more leverage. So really nice for amplifying bodyweight exercises, for pairing with bodyweight exercises, great for warming up, even cooling down and resting out, great for days off. Mace, a bit more of a training tool, so you would program the mace in. Again, it can be paired with a push. It goes in on back day if you're doing like body part stuff. Superset it, or you can put it into like a circuit as part of a conditioning type circuit, especially if it's upper body focus. Some of the guys I've worked with have done mace work and they find it primes their upper back lovely for squats and deads. So it could fit in there as assistance or even prep work for that. So, are they essential tools? You need to use them? No, no tool is essential. Don't get married to any piece of equipment. You are training your body. You're not training maces. You're not training kettlebells. You're not training barbells. You're training you using these tools. But is it worth having? You go to heroicsport.com, you get a pair of these for cheap. Get yourself a bottle of fizzy pop, tip it out, clean it out. If that's a 1 litre bottle full of water, that's a 1 kilo Indian club up to there. Then you can add more leverage, or you can add a bigger bottle, or you can add a heavier filling. And it's nearly free. It's like 30 quid or something like that. It's nothing. Wooden Indian clubs going triple figures, so you pay all sorts. I made that myself. You can buy maces, you can buy steel maces. Steel maces, there is weight in the handle. This bamboo weighs next to nothing, but it's phenomenally strong. So all the weight is in the end. So that feels way heavier than the equivalent weight steel mace. So yeah, play with it. If nothing else, when you are swinging Indian clubs and maces, you will look and feel like an absolute savage, and people will look at you and go, whoa. That makes it worth it just in itself. But yeah, shoulder health, rotator cuff health. They're not going to make you super strong. They're not, but it's what we call joining up the strength. Glue exercise. They glue you together, so you move better as a unit. That's where Indian clubs and maces come in. Play with them. Look up Rick Brown. Rick spelled R-I-K, Brown. He's the mace father. Look up Paul Taras Wolkowinski. Just make up the spelling. He'll pop up. He's kind of the father of the Western father of Indian clubs. Scott Sonnen has a lot of steel club information out there. Who else? Search Pat Miletich Indian clubs, and you'll find the video that kind of got me into this journey. Put my name in. I have a few videos on YouTube. And yeah, Heroic Sport, Thierry Henry. Buy his little blue handles. You'll not regret it. They're great. Right, that's enough for today. Send in your questions. The more questions I get from you guys, the more relevant these posts become. And of course, YouTube, you have to do the like, then you subscribe, and then there's a little bell thing. I've never figured out what that does. But the more likes I get, the better apparently these videos spread, and the more people get to hear my dulcet tones. Alrighty, until next week, get to it.